All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Please join me for the pledge. Pledge of allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have the approval of the minutes from October 19th. If there's no questions on that, do we have a motion to accept those minutes as submitted?
Make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Public comment, since there's no one here. We'll skip over that. Discussion items. We have the facilities committee met last night. Graydon, would you like to do the honors?
Yeah.
It was very informative. We covered a lot.
Yeah, so they gave us updates on where we stand with the capital projects now. The phase one with the Townsend floodproofing and that kind of work. The roof work itself has mostly been completed now. They had a couple leaks they were still looking at, but they were pretty confident they were going to have those well in hand here coming up shortly. Then they started talking about the phase two, and really the phase two is all of the macadam, the new parking area out here, all the new sidewalks, things like that. And really they have a good plan for breaking that into 3 different sections. So the first one they want to try to work, and they've done this in 3 sections to try to gain more time, because limiting into summer work schedule is just too much. There's too much work to be done. So they came up with a really good way of, the first phase is this phase out here, which is where they extend the parking and duplicate the parking area, extend the bank, things like that. So we have all the parking area out here. When they're doing that, they're going to have all the parking over in the student parking. So they're going to shift staff and students over into that area, complete this area work ahead of the June schedule. So they're talking about like April start. Obviously weather's dependent, but like an April start. Once they get that completed, then they're going to flip all the parking out over into these lots and then close off the student section, still allowing for drop-offs and returns, but then they're going to do all of that work. Phase 3 has to take place over the summer because it's actually from the entrance of Maple Street. All your main roads connecting all those have to be done when there's no students here. So they got it in 3 different phases from what it looks like. It looks pretty favorable to do it that way. I think everybody was pretty excited that they went through those processes to get that done. So that's the plan going forward. I know that we're really keen on saying, make sure the school advises everybody way ahead of time. This is what the situation is going to be. These are what the barriers are. Here's what the fence is. A lot of communication is going to have to come back. Probably have to ask parents, is there any way you can, or students to carpool, drop-offs, can you drop off on the bottom of Stockton, things like that, just to try to make it less congested up here while they're trying to get that work done. Townsend School came up again as a floor repair. I know that we put in front of them as a facilities committee with the school, doing the floors above the cafeteria and that whole entire wing, one shot is just too much. We told them we didn't want disruption of staff and students. So what they've developed there is basically over 2 years to be able to do floors on one side and ceilings on one side, allow traffic through that, during a summer process, shut down, maybe run into like November-ish with a couple of the classrooms to finish, then wait for the next summer to do the other half of it. I don't know how else they're going to get around that because your cafeteria is impacted, which impacts everybody. There's no corridors around that work, so it's not like you can send the kids, hey, boot up and go outside, go through the parking lot to go to gym class. You just can't do it. So unfortunately, I think that's just going to be a longer, drawn-out process, but they are moving forward with that as well, and I think logistically, that's all they have to do is solve what those issues are.
Yep.
Coming forward with that one. So making great strides. I think overall production has been right on task. CNS as well as I'm gonna say BCA.
Yeah.
That team with us has done an excellent job. It's been nice to bounce ideas back and forth, and Meg is still working her magic, keeping all the numbers in balance. So
Yep.
Good effort, and it's been working well.
We have bids coming back November.
Yeah, they're opening.
17th?
Yep.
November 17th. So.
7 they open,
30th.
7 they close. I think that's when they're out now.
Yes.
And they close now. Yep.
Right, close in. Yep. So.
So that's for that section, all the ground disturbance work. separate.
Right,
Mhm.
and the
So
electrical upgrades for the energy efficiency.
Well, that's the other important part is, every single light's gonna get changed to LED, both in this campus and Townsend as well. I don't remember bus drivers are updating
No,
exterior lights as well, so, I mean, a lot of the LED, the energy efficient stuff, we've been pushing to get the money back, return on this long-term. They're working on all that, as well as they're gonna insulate the top band all the way around Townsend. Most of your heat losses are at the top of the wall where the wall meets the floor joints, that's like not insulated in any of the buildings. So a big part of that work's gotta be done too,
We'll put like spray foam
Yeah.
all the way around there, so.
on the inside to insulate.
and the corridors in here, the ceilings, the inlights will be changed, so if you noticed, if you're walking through middle school, you'll notice some of the corridors have water stained ceiling tiles from the work that was done in the roof project. We made an agreement with the roofing company, we received enough tiles to do some of the room spaces. And when we're doing the work on that, we left the corridors, we didn't want them to replace good, brand new tile corridors, then we're gonna rip the ceilings out the following
Right.
year. So we made an arrangement with them to get, so we've got enough ceiling tiles to take care of like what's in here and the home ec room and the various other classrooms that had some water stain from the roofing project. So we're gonna be in good shape in the classrooms, and the corridors will show ceiling stains wherever there are until next summer. And then it'll be all new. So that's important to know.
So it's gonna be a lot of work, and once the school, puts that information out there to the parents and,
Yep.
just ask for patience because we're gonna need it. They're gonna have fencing and everything to protect, the areas that they're working in. So it's gonna look really busy and it's gonna crowd, other areas.
Yep.
They are gonna leave, enough space out here for buses and emergency vehicles. But it's still gonna be, I think the best bet is, what you had talked about is dropping off down at Stockton Ave and letting the kids walk up the sidewalk. That way the parents aren't getting stuck in the traffic as well and congestion.
Giving them enough notice of when it's gonna take place, I think that it'll go smooth and they'll know the end project is worth the chaos.
Well, phase one, like Rhonda talked about in our meeting, is you now you're displacing your staff parking too. That's going out in student parking as well as your students, as well as drop off. So that's gonna get phase one's gonna get very congested.
Yeah.
When we trip over into phase two, now you have, better parking arrangements, things like that out here, but, it's just, this is we have to get things done, and that's the order we have to do them in, so.
So we've got a number of things, so we're targeting March for that floor vote potentially for Townsend School. So we've got that going out, plus we've got the construction going out, so we have communications that can go on around the same time. So my initial thought is maybe a January newsletter that talks about the upcoming project at Townsend, but then also talks about the phase two project to give them that much notice.
A heads
And then
up,
we'll
yep.
do other things as well.
Right.
So we'll talk about kind of what we did in phase one, remind them what happened in phase one, hit on phase two, talk about those details, and then hit on the project coming up, so we can show what we're doing, why we're doing the new one, and then go from there. But that's
And-
kind of
and-
my initial thought.
And we talk about phase one, phase two, if there can be a visual, how they
Exactly.
drew
That's
that
why a
out.
nice newsletter
I'm
would be,
a visual person, when it
know,
comes to the mapping and stuff.
get some good images in there.
Yeah,
Capture some of the floodgates will be done, capture some of those things, and show just a whole thing that shows nothing but the progress
Yep.
and what's coming, the upcoming. So we'll work on that. After, if we do January, we're pre-budget work, because we'll have the budget newsletter later. So we'll target, we have a staff newsletter coming out, new staff newsletter coming out this month. In December, we'll start developing that one for January, and then we'll go from there.
If you guys get a chance, everybody else on the board, under the library, if you click on the facilities committee, and then you pull down the facilities committee meeting 11/1/2001, you will see every one of those plans are on there, and they're very, very user-friendly. I mean, color-coded, which phases are doing what.
yeah.
I would recommend, a couple of these are so powerful, it would be good to have in that newsletter,
Exactly.
because that's that
They were
visual
very
piece you're talking
detailed,
about.
yeah.
And we'll develop it with CNS.
Yep.
And we'll, that one is a very important, and we'll make sure to bring that to the board, that draft. That
Yep.
we won't just
Send it, yeah.
just run with that one. We'll make sure that we vet it and have a lot of eyes on that one.
Good. Much needed work, though.
Mm-hmm.
All right, policy committee meeting, looking to have a meeting in November, well, this month. By quick. There's available dates there. If you could get back to Corey as soon as possible so they can get scheduled, unless Kevin would be missing on that. Did Kevin stay?
He did not.
Okay. All right, so yeah, if we can let Corey know as soon as possible so that can get scheduled. And then also the curriculum committee, looking for a meeting as well. And then also put your availability into Corey and get that scheduled. All right, flag football. Did everyone have a chance to go over those attachments? And do you want to talk about the startup funds, how that works, or how
Yeah,
it works?
this is an interesting one, because New York State, of course, as they do, they come to you 2 weeks before they have to have an answer. They were approached, and then the one document that's attached. Buffalo Bills, Jets, and the Giants have donated $30,000. They've donated more than that. $30,000 is allocated to Section 4. Depending on how many teams go into the pilot will depend on how they divvy that up. So it'll be divided among, I think, 14 potential schools that were at the meeting. Say 10 of them do it, be $3,000 coming to each school. And then you've got a $16,000 uniform credit that came from Nike. So the estimated cost, this is a state estimated cost of $7,000 to $8,000. They took into account 6 games, potential, some of that being travel, referee cost, potential coaching or advisor cost, uniform cost. So they just estimated that at that amount. That's not our estimate. And then that would have the allocation. So annually, if those numbers are true, that's what the cost would be potentially for this type of a team. I think it's high, honestly. 6 games, flag football. The coaching level would be a lower level in our salary scale. You're talking 3 games if you split them in half for travel, and then uniform costs one time and then cycle. So I don't see it being that high as annual, but let's say it's half and an annual fee. So start $3,500. This is between, our budget cycle. This is something that's a pilot. Typically we don't look at things of this nature in between,
Correct.
But given there's money to support it, at least majority of it, that's why we're bringing it to the table. It's a potential for a pilot in a unique program.
And that money, that startup money, is 1 year only.
Correct, correct.
But like Mike said, or Dr. McDonald said, that's a good chunk of money for uniform credit and things like that, because how long, presumably the uniforms could last a good while, and then you're cycling them over 3 years. I don't know,
Depending on the type of uniform?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing that worries me about this, and I hate, you gotta make a decision because, the state again, is that when we made budget cuts a few years back, we cut some sports that were important to students.
Correct. Golf,
like golf,
tennis.
tennis, boys and girls. I hate
Cross
to,
country.
right, cross country, exactly. So I hate to add a sport, especially mid-year, and not even give them the opportunity to consider and to see what the students are really, what they would rather. That would be my.
When do we have to decide by tonight?
They have it, yeah, we have to opt in to this pilot. They gave us literally 2 weeks. In fact, we're pushing it.
Well, also, it's a state thing, so although I know that they cut programs, and I'm definitely not for doing that, but giving these also the opportunity for a unique thing, and the money being there. The money isn't there at this time, and should it come down the state, then that would be great for those other sports too. But we can't predict that and what brings forth. This gives our students more opportunities too.
And it is a dual sport offering.
I was gonna say that's.
Kids can play other sports while they're doing it. And I will say, one of the things that I hope as we move through the budget and we move through the next few years, is that we will look at some of those sports that we have eliminated and to see if there is interest level in us taking a look at those lifetime sports, you know, such as tennis, such as golf, such as cross country. Doesn't mean we can't bring them back. When we lost the student interest combined with the fiscal, that doesn't mean that we can't recycle and take a good look at that. So I hope we have that opportunity in the future. I hope our financial stability allows us to look at that.
Right, right, and that's why I said, like, this is
Yep.
funded for 1 year, basically, but
Correct.
then as it goes on,
Yep.
you know, once you have it, you can't easily take it away.
Yeah,
you know,
I would
so-
estimate, I would say a fair estimate, safe estimate would be 3,500 to 4,000 would be a safe budget value annually for 6 games, three would travel, coach, and then incidental costs during the year, officials and
Now,
such.
we won't know what other schools participate, so we wouldn't know how far we would be traveling if
And
we
we-
had to travel.
Right, it'd be section 4. And we also don't know if there's any that are opting in. This could, you know, we could say yes and then find out that nope, there's not enough schools and they're not gonna do it. It could end up being there's 3 schools and it's the 3 schools playing against each other. We have no idea to know. The one thing that we did not have a clear answer on was, and Adam tried to get an answer, but he did not get an answer. And I will say this, section 4 didn't even know that the state was coming down with this. This is completely, unfortunate. It's not the way that the state should be processing. But I said, what are we opting into? What is our commitment? So I don't know what our commitment is. Obviously, there's nothing that says that you can't say no after you get more details. We opt in now, they generate it, they work it. You know what I mean? It isn't like we opt into a league
So if
season,
we
we
opt
find
in
out that we have
contingent
kids.
to,
You know, I would feel comfortable saying, if you're okay with the finances this year of that amount, of opting in to get additional details. But I wouldn't want us to say we're opting in. I'd want to opt in that if the details came as far as like safety concerns, you had more safety concerns. But if we have enough sports, if we're not traveling from here to Elmira for every game, things of that nature, which it wouldn't be, you have a neutral site, there's plenty of fields that have that on, especially turf fields. I'd want us to be able to make a genuine commitment and not opt in knowing that there's a real good chance we're gonna opt back out, if that makes any sense.
I think you said there's 25 to 30 high school.
That's
Express
survey
interest?
9 through 12. Yep.
Yeah, that would be my only concern, because I know that we struggle with having subs on soccer in the fall, and you're only playing.
Yeah.
But this is
This is
spring.
spring and it's the
Yes,
dual,
I know,
the
but
dual sports is good.
yeah, I mean, but you have kids that are playing softball.
Yep.
And they potentially could play this.
But they can
And
play
they-
both.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
I
okay.
understand that, but, I mean, we have a hard enough time fielding
Right.
teams in the fall when they're only playing one sport and to have subs.
right, and not to
So,
say
I mean,
that
it's
the
a
dual,
struggle.
the dual
So-
would be, you know, I'm sure there would be
Conflicts.
conflicts,
Right.
calendar conflicts.
Yeah, so you got
Um,
track, right? We have track in the spring, and we have
Softball.
a JV and varsity 2 softball teams.
Baseball.
You know,
But they won't, that's boys, so,
Right.
so the girls have the option to
Right.
play track and football.
I think it's a
Right.
good opportunity. Try it. The money's there for it. Get it out there. You get more details that come back not in the positive, then you settle that then. But I wouldn't want to take an opportunity away and see how it goes.
I agree with
I
that.
agree.
So if we opt in and we'll keep a tight handle on the details that come in, and we'll communicate out kind of what those details are. I'll keep you in the loop, and if there's anything that's concerning, we'll pull the plug.
And we don't know
Anything
how
that's
much because, I mean, we're potentially, if we're sharing that 16,000 with all the other Section 4 schools,
concerning. Well, no, there's 14 that went to the initial meeting, and only those 14 are available. There's 14 that could potentially go in at this time
For 30,000.
for 30,000.
16 for the uniforms.
And that's if-
16 for the uniform, so that's
Correct.
what I'm
It'd be
thinking.
like $1,000.
Right, so if
potentially.
you're figuring roughly 1,000.
Yep.
That's not gonna cover uniforms, I
No,
would think.
And it's, again, that's potentially, yep. So we could have, it may not be 100% covered. We could have some cost here, absolutely, we just don't know. So we can get the details of how many schools are opted in, what our actual financials would be. I can communicate that out for a final commitment. Right now, we do an initial opt-in. For us to say we're in, we want to be in the initial pending what the actual final outcome is from the financial, then we'll make our finals. I think that's a very appropriate statement for us to say back to the section of the state, to say, we'll give you an initial green light, however, you got to show us the final numbers.
Right, we wanna know
before
what
we
the-
can make our commitment.
Right. I feel more comfortable with that, you know,
Okay.
versus just opting in and saying, yeah, and then not knowing what
Me
it
as
exactly
well.
it's gonna cost
Yep.
the district.
Absolutely. So we'll do that. I'll give Adam the green light to let them know exactly that. And then when we get the final, oh, there's 8 teams. Hey, wonderful, you know, I mean, that's 6 teams even better.
Right,
Play each
And-
team
and-
once and,
To be clear,
You know?
because we did sit around this table and we had a similar discussion mid-cycle where there was
correct.
thinking about bringing a sport on in another year. This is exclusively because this came on very short notice from the state, and there is an opportunity for funding in its entirety. If not, you know,
Correct.
then we're reserving the right to not pursue it, but that's why.
Yep.
so do you need a motion on that? Would you
I don't
need-
think so. I
Okay.
think just a green light to pursue it. And then, if we have to, you know, there's a lot of things we have to work through. Once we establish it, we have to determine how we're going to supervise it. Is it going to be an advisor? Is it going to be, what level of coach is it going to be? Then we're gonna.
How
So
many?
we may have that approval. We may have more details coming, but
Okay.
I'll get the details behind it first and we'll do the analysis and get the info
Correct,
to the
and
board.
then down the road, you would establish the team.
Correct.
Right,
Along with the coaches, everything, we'll do it in a package.
okay.
So-
Yeah, I think that would be better. That way we kind of have an idea of how much exactly it's gonna cost, especially when
Yeah.
I can think of the fishing, you know,
Correct.
when we said we'll allow that, but you have to, there's no pay for at the time for the
Yep.
advisor and self-transport, so I would rather have more information.
And
All right.
given all of that and that history, that's why I want to make sure that the board was even in agreement for us to pursue it with additional details coming. So, okay, thank you for
All right.
that.
And don't forget, November 10th, 5:30 is our retreat. With our attorney.
And that's right here, right?
That's here, yep.
Yep, if you haven't given Corey your meal request, please do.
I wasn't picky.
I must have missed that email. Sorry.
Liver and onions. You're okay with that?
Butter.
I would take it.
Oh, no.
Wait,
That I
bacon,
would be
bacon too,
picky.
right?
I'd be
That's good.
picky on that one. All right, no correspondence
Correct.
or additions to the agenda?
No additions.
Okay. All right, the consent agenda, we have a scale that needs to be declared surplus. We have actually 2 resignations. Patricia Hessler, head cook, effective November 1st, and Kimberly Carr, teacher aide, effective October 27th. And then we have an unpaid leave of absent request. Just because of the timing of this will be for Kimberly Carr as well. And we have a personnel appointment. This would be for Jacqueline Smith as a mentor for starting November 3rd. And then personnel mentor approval for Jacqueline Smith to mentor Nancy Saglandini, long-term substitute. And then we have the athletic recommendation, and that is for volunteer girls basketball
Assistant.
assistant coach Gary Williams. Do we have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I'll make it.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, and then 8, new business, accept donations. We have several donations, $100 from Lorinda Pearson family to the FFA in memory of Donald Schofield Jr., $100 from Bruce Gregory to the FFA. These are all in memory of Donald Schofield Jr., $250 from Francis Wood, $50 from Tracy and Ron Williams, $50 from Bruce and Jane Sulger, $100 from Robert and Donna Heshton. I'm not sure if I pronounced Henshin, and $35 from oh my goodness, from Butch and Judy Neal. Do we have a motion to accept those donations?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I feel like I'm eating this mask tonight. All right, the approval of the corrective action plan. Once again, this was the plan that we have in place for our fund balance. We were over the New York State real property tax limit of the 4%, and this is the plan that we have in place to take care of the additional fund balance. If there's no questions on that, do we have a motion to accept that plan?
Make a motion.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, we have the second reading of the policies. Mr. Wood, would you like to go over those policies?
You know I would, Rhonda. Policy 1530, smoking, vaping, and other tobacco use on school premises. Policy number 4000, student learning standards and instructional guidelines. Number 5460, child abuse, neglect, and maltreatment in a domestic setting. 8220, buildings and grounds maintenance and inspection. 8505, charging school meals and prohibition against shaming.
All right, and we had one question on that was answered, and that was the world language, and that being Spanish in our case. That's the one that we offer here.
Mhm.
So, do we have a motion to accept these policies as our second reading?
I make a motion.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, everyone received the supervisor's remarks? Were there any questions? I bet you John is happy we got that tractor.
Yep,
And-
absolutely. I'm gonna be happy when the truckload of fruit comes for FFA and they actually are using a machine that can lift it
Right.
safely instead
Safely.
of, a machine that's really not to be utilized for that kind of weight. So it's all about safety, about clearing snow. It's gonna be a very good to have that addition. If you notice, Rick's here, as we know. If you notice in Rick's report, we had a major overheat due to an issue with the air conditioning unit. We don't know how it actually ended up. My understanding is somehow it got turned off, which still turned off on the roof. You might be able to guess how that probably happened, lever being turned, who we had on the roof. So of course, nobody's gonna admit that. But it did cause our server room to overheat. We have we have an air conditioner in each of our server rooms that we put into place back, when we put in the network, back in 1999, when I first became involved in the network. And they repaired it and updated the guts of it, but we hadn't updated the main unit. So we have a major investment in that room and all of our protection in that room. Rick has now put an alarm system that will report to us anytime temperature raises, and we are getting quotes to get that unit upgraded.
Was there a
And it's
thermal
certainly-
shutdown though?
It was what?
Thermal shutdown, so it stopped before it overheated?
No, what happened was the air conditioner went off, the heat went up, and there's no mechanism. So we did have a couple, Mark, you're here, why am I speaking?
We noticed the cameras were out and further investigation, there was a couple dead power supplies that overheated and died.
Okay.
So luckily, most of our servers have 2 power supplies, so we just took the backup from our other servers and put it in the one that was dead, which got it back up and running, but not an ideal situation.
So then that opened our eyes to, and Rick had been, he had been on this for a while now, but then we said, now's the time. So we took a look at both the ages of both of our air conditioning units. We've had contractor in, we got quotes coming, we'll get those 2 upgraded. We just have too much of a valuable investment with our network and our operations. Well, let's face it, the network goes down, we're kind of dead in the water. We're not doing much. So we kind of got to have those rooms protected.
What do you think that room got to temperature-wise?
It was definitely over, my guess is 95 to 100. When I opened the door, I knew right away, immediately. I pulled out the server and I couldn't even put my hand on the top of the metal case. We have, I mean, honestly, that room is worth $750,000 or more, or greater. But the value comes in that it runs our phones, it runs our doors, it runs our cameras.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
It runs our network. It's literally the brains of the operation. So it's important that that room does not. I ended up honestly getting upset with myself because it's happened before, and we just fixed the issue rather than, let's think through this. Now let's put an alarm in place. So now it'll read temperature and humidity for a flood, since we experience flooding here. So whenever the humidity is over a certain, percentage, temperatures over or under, now Dr. McDonald gets an alert, I get an alert, John Jackson gets an alert. So we'll know immediately, and we can get here. John's always around, one of us is always around. We can tend to the situation and take care of it.
At a minimum, we can get the doors open, get
Right.
air movement,
Yeah.
and get the temperature knocked down. So, sometimes you have situations that you catch before damage, sometimes things get damaged before you catch them. So we're gonna address it and have that taken care of, but we're not gonna just do it here. We have another unit over at the other school, the smaller unit, and we'll get those both taken care of within the next few months. It's up and operational, we're okay. There was not an issue with the air conditioning unit. When they went up under the roof to explore it, there was a contractor extension cord plugged into the unit up there, and when instead of taking their extension cord and unplug it, they kicked the power to that box that they had it plugged into, and it was the same power that powered the air conditioning unit into the unit.
Oh,
So of course, none of them, nobody did it.
realize that there was a problem.
Yeah, nobody
Right.
did it. So that is what it is. We're still working through that conversation. But we're gonna make sure that, once we identified, I went in there when I returned here, and I went in the room, looked up and said, oh, I remember when I got that unit back in 1999. And I said, oh, it's the same unit. That's probably not a good thing. That's a long time for an air conditioning unit. Even though the major mechanical parts have been replaced, you've got the computer and electronics in it that have not been replaced, and now it's 20 years old. So it's time. So we'll get that taken care of, get the alarm, so now what we call our NOC, our Network Operations Center, will be secured safely.
Okay.
So, any other questions on any of the reports?
No?
Okay, the guardrails have been taken care of at Townsend School, by the way. They were cut and ground the other morning, and there's no sharp edges. That was something that Mr. Bedine had brought up at a previous meeting. So Millard did a nice job on that and took care of that liability concern.
With the retirements we had with bus tracks, how are we doing with that? I see Tracy was reporting he had one more in training for sub. Numbers wise,
Hanging in there. We got we're staying stable. Always nice to have more building up in the sub pool, especially so when others leave, we have others that slide in. But so far, he's staying steady. We've been blessed here in this community. We truly have been. As Tracy says to me, is the minute he starts getting nervous, he has an exit he's worried about, somebody walks in the door. And he's been fortunate throughout his career, but that's what happens. Word of mouth, whether it's just this area and it's a good job, or whether it's the reputation of the school, the department, and their kids. That driving bus at Walton is in some places you hear stories where it's not a good idea to go drive bus, it's not necessarily a friendly job or atmosphere, but here I think it's not that way. It's supported, both departmentally, administratively, and I think our kids, relatively, other than a few exceptions every now and then, the mistakes are very well behaved in our buses. So, we're lucky.
I think the thing that would hurt us is, if someone had to be quarantined or a few of them at one time, that would really hurt us. As well as the sports trips start really going, that makes it a little bit more difficult, but.
Yeah, that's always
Talk to,
a strain, and again, it's worked out very well.
all right.
And those are the only remarks that I have.
Oh, okay,
We're good.
that's it. And we don't have the need for executive session, correct?
No.
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Wonderful.